about you.
Howdy, and welcome back to the Kite Circuit Sword Lite GameBoy Zero build guide. Fifth and final step, it's going to be the back case modification, install, and we're going to go ahead and close it all up. So first things first, we're going to have to make a few cuts. First mod we're going to do is, got to remove this little notch right here. That guy right there, we got to take out all that. Then after that, right through this hole here is where you're going to be inserting your battery cord. You can get away with not making a cut to this part, but it's really hard to get your battery plugged in. So I'm going to go ahead and make a cut there just to open it up a little bit and make it a lot easier. Let's go. Now that we have those two cuts made, next step, we're going to go ahead and knock out the power switch. So it's going to entail the power switch bracket and the power switch itself. So it's going to lay in like so. We're going to drop that guy right in like that. However, we are going to have to solder on our mode button to the power switch. And I'm not sure, some of you may have missed it. In one of my videos, I notated in the description that as you're going through Kite's setup guide, I recommend holding off before finishing the last three steps, which do include soldering the speaker, soldering the mode button, and one other step I can't recall right now. And the reason is, with this specific power board bracket, you can get a couple different ones. I know HoolyHoo makes a power board bracket, if I'm not mistaken, that comes in two parts. It comes in the power board bracket plus a support button for your mode button itself. This has the support and the power board bracket all in one. Now, because of that, it is impossible to solder the mode button beforehand, place it into the bracket, and then place the bracket into the device. What we're going to have to do is actually put the mode button in where we're going to have it inside the case here, set the power board on top of it, feeding the legs through the two holes on the power board here, and solder it on while it's sitting inside the case. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up and get it ready to do, and also bring you guys in closer so we can show you how to solder on the mode button. Really simple, but yeah, be right back. Okay guys, one thing that I almost forgot before we go ahead and solder in our mode button is the power switch button. So when you get Kite's board, or when you get Kite's kit rather, the power button is, or the switch on his power board is actually going to be too long for some reason or another. So your switch is going to be inserted like this. So if you see, when you try to drop in the power switch, the button is far too long to fit inside of this little groove on the switch itself. So it should be sliding in just like that. It's too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually clip the switch a little bit. So the way I'm going to do that is go ahead and insert the power switch button, I'm going to kind of drop this in as best I can. And then I'm just going to eyeball it. This isn't really that, it doesn't have to be exact. It just has to be short enough to fit in those grooves there. So it's honestly about half. You just have to clip about half of the button off. So flush cutters, and I'm just going to eyeball this. And boom, just like that. So now it should be short enough. Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, now that we got the power switch all sorted, we're going to go ahead and finally solder up the mode button. So you want to go power switch in. It's going to take a little bit of finagling. Mode button in, and then go ahead and drop in the bracket. Alright. Takes a little bit of fiddling around, but should be good. Okay. Just so we don't have anything moving around on us, I'm going to go ahead and tack down the power switch bracket with some hot glue. Boom. Alright guys, and that is how you solder on your mode button. Last and final step, very important, you gotta mask this off with some Kapton tape. Very important that you mask this off with Kapton tape, because when you close up your case, these two contacts are basically going to be sitting right on top of your micro USB slot. Alright, next step, let's go ahead and get our L&R buttons situated. So that is going to entail getting our back button board bracket, and just like with the front buttons, we're going to go ahead and use the well guide, drop that in there, and then make our pilot holes. Okay, looks good. There are two pilot holes, our step bit. Got our holes bored out. They're looking good, very even. Now, next step, we're gonna have to wire up the actual backboard itself. Okay, so what you're gonna need for this process of soldering up your L1 and R1 button board is obviously 2 parts to your backboard bracket. I like to keep the USB board on hand just so we can measure out the length of our wire. Obviously you're going to need your back button board and these two wires. So this is the main connectors, which will join the USB board here. This one's going to go over to your power switch here, and then this wire here is actually going to be for L1. Smaller 3-wire JST that Kite includes with his kit, this is actually going to be your R1. So big connector is L1, small connector is R1, which is going to fit right into the USB board here and sit just like this into the case. So what we're going to actually do is wire up to these pins here, or these pads rather, on the back button board. You got ground, L1, L2, ground, R1, R2. We're just going to do L1 and R1. So corresponding wires, let's just speak on R1 right now. Black's obviously going to be ground, yellow is going to be where we solder to R1, and red is actually R2. Since we're only going to be doing L1 and R1, I'm just going to go ahead and snip the red off. And just like Aaron Morris shows in his videos, I'm going to leave a little bit on the end just in case I want to come back to it and add that button later on. And I've already kind of like predetermined how much wire I'm going to use in these folds here, but just to kind of show you the process of how I did that, basically just go ahead and hook up your wires to your corresponding boards, set the bracket in place, and because I'm using this 2-part, I grabbed this piece as well. So how this is going to sit basically is this is going to go in first, and this is going to sit on top, just like so. But I'm actually going to be routing this wire around a couple posts just to make things nice and neat on the inside here. So it's going to sit like this with my back button bracket like that. So you can see how my wire is kind of routed around a few posts on the inside there and coming out here, and then it's just going to basically fold down here to my backboard, just like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and snip these. And we're going to do the same with L1. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this at the very end of the JST connector. And we're just going to go ahead and start stripping these wires down. Grab our flux, and we're going to go ahead and, just like with every other wire we've done so far in the tutorial, we're going to tin these wires up. So I'm just going to dip them straight into my flux here. Grab our backboard. So this is going to be L1. So we're going to go into ground and L1, and then kind of bend these wires back to try to hold it in place as best as we can. We're going to do the same here. So into ground, and R1. Fold those guys over. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys in close. Try to show you as best I can how to solder these up. and then I'm just going to go ahead and clean up these wires just so we don't cross anything. Alright, so next comes the easy part. Just gonna start bolting everything in, guys. So first things first, drop in our button bracket, drop in our buttons. So you're obviously gonna have to take a AB button membrane and cut them up. I've actually cut these to fit perfectly. So we're going to drop those in now. Okay. So next we would put our back button board bracket in, but I'm going to go ahead and get the USB board ready because we're going to be tacking all this down together at once. So this is the that support bracket that I was mentioning earlier. So that's going to drop in like that. Backboard's going to sit right on top. Okay, got everything kind of situated already. Got my wires routed around where I want them to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and tack all of this down with a screw right down the center. Okay, looks good. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and hit the other side of this backboard bracket right here. Just so everything is in there nice and tight. And kind of drop our USB board bracket, or I'm sorry, our USB board in. Okay. So before we go ahead and tack anything down, I'm going to actually plug this guy in so we don't have to go through the hassle of doing that later. And go ahead and plug this guy in too. Okay. Go ahead and tack this down here. And we're going to go ahead and hit the other side as well. And there we go. Everything's nice and neat. Could have snipped these wires a little bit shorter, but it's okay. They are out of the way. Not really doing much. Probably find a nice, neater way to kind of route these wires, but I can always figure that out later. For right now, everything's tacked in nice and tight. L1, R1 buttons feel really good. Go ahead and plug in this power cord and let's button her up. Alright, that looks really nice. I think I'm going to go back later on and maybe tack these down with some hot glue after I figure out exactly where I want to route everything. And that'll just keep it sitting nice and neat, you know, everything out of the way. Alright, awesome. So, next step, the two halves of the Game Boy are basically going to be connected by one ribbon cable. So you're going to go blue side up into this side here. You definitely want to make sure that this is inserted all the way and that it's even. You don't want it to be cockeyed or crooked because it will not work. Just going to go ahead and turn it like this so we can get this side inserted. There we go. And we're just gonna kind of lay this down for now. I'll figure out exactly where I want that ribbon cable to go, but for right now, that actually seems pretty good. Make sure your case is closing nice and flush. You don't want any kind of pressure or anything like that going on. And unless I'm forgetting something, I think we're all good to go ahead and close it up. Before you do close it up, right now would be a good time to test everything, make sure that everything's working, you got everything wired up correctly. So I would just go ahead and flip that power switch, but the anticipation is much more important for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and start screwing these guys down. Plug our battery in. And there we go, guys. Completed Game Boy Zero. Alright. Everything feels really nice. Everything's nice and flush. I do want to go back. I'm going to open this back up because I forgot to add the... Well, I didn't forget. I just wanted to reroute these wires to make sure that everything's where I want it to be, and then I'm going to go ahead and install the battery sled and then our cartridge. But for now, let's see if she works. Haha. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, this is so sweet. Nice little splash screen that I did up, guys. All right. There we go. So it looks like our X and Y, or I'm sorry, our A, B buttons are working. Our D-pad isn't working for some reason. I'm gonna have to go back in, configure my controller. But yeah, guys, I mean, it's looking good. But I'm gonna go back in. I'm gonna install the battery sled, or the cartridge sled and the cartridge, and then yeah, get some really nice you know, pan shots of the actual completed device, and then maybe a little bit of gameplay.